That's all right.
That's a good idea. I should run down, but I won't wait. Got some cold coffee. Don't remember if this is today's or yesterday's. So I collect coffee, half-drank coffee mugs up here in my office.
So it says, what's that vehicle doing there? And then he says, drive or where I'm at.
Okay, Bill's coming.
What?
There you are.
Galvin in the house.
Wait a minute. It says I can't start video.
Let's see what we can do about that.
Not that it's important.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, no, it isn't.
I can't start the video either.
Aha!
Now it's the preset of the town system. And you would think 2 years later, I'd remember that, but I don't.
Well, it's
Indeed.
probably good. It may avoid some embarrassing
Yes.
Still doesn't work.
things.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
Look at all of those people. Jay
All right.
Fain and Nick Macri and Tom Hegney and
Dog hasn't moved in months.
Norma's dog's very well trained. Standing guard over every meeting.
Norma, feed your dog.
He doesn't look emaciated.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, I guess you don't burn a lot of calories standing still like that.
No,
Hey, Donald's daughter.
you're fine.
Hello, Klaus.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
Good.
There we go.
Right.
So I've been frantically trying to find a pair of my readers,
Uh-oh.
which all seem to disappear. So I've got my mom's tortoise shell.
Lovely.
You like it? Is it a good
Yeah.
look?
Oh, that's a good look.
Oh, there
Yes.
you go. There you
Good, all
go.
right.
Yeah, my husband will don the polka dots now and again when absolutely necessary.
Yeah. They seem to just have feet and walk off on their own. So Pat, do we have a full house? Anyone else we're waiting for? Mr.
I don't, Bob or Doreen, do you know anything about Elliot?
I left him a packet. He didn't say he wasn't coming, so I'm assuming he's coming.
I think he's coming.
Hi, so I leave it up to you.
Give it one more minute. I'm just gonna refill my water.
I'm going to test my screen, make sure everything works. Are you all seeing that?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, great.
Doreen, can you zoom in on various
Yeah,
apps?
just let me know if you want to see something specific. I can zoom in on anything.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that in one of the presentations we saw recently. The gentleman was very adept at, he was an outside consultant, as I recall, but he was just very adept at moving things around and highlighting certain things. It was very useful.
Okay, usually I have all the maps that were sent to you. So if there's a specific map, typically I have it. So just let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Doreen, you're coming in twice here?
Yeah, is it possible to
Okay.
put me into the attendees? I'd just like to see what comes up on the screen because I
Sure.
can't see it otherwise.
Hang on. I mean,
Or
it
if you don't
doesn't
mind.
bother me to have you there.
Okay,
Oh, you want to be an attendee?
it doesn't matter to me either.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you alter
Ready
Doreen
to-
as attendee. All right, are we ready? I will have to start the recording when we're ready.
Okay,
I
start
just
the
sent
recording.
Elliot a text, so I don't know whether he's going to come or not.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
All right, we are being recorded. I'll start with
Okay.
attendance in order that I see. Bill Galvin, Jay Schondorf, Peter Linderoth, Klaus Yonder, Norma Curlin, Brian Harris,
Mhm.
Staff members Robert Clausy, Doreen Carroll Andrews, and Patricia Sesto.
Okay.
We are being recorded, and for audience members, the pending applications that we are discussing this evening are closed public hearings, so there will be no offer to the public to comment.
Very good. Okay, well, welcome everyone to the February 8th, 2022 special meeting of the Greenwich Inlands Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. We have made the roll call. So let's just jump right into it. First item tonight is application 2021-132, 1143 East Putnam Avenue, Hegney, Lennon and Slane LLP for Frank Corbin Jr., construction of multifamily residence, driveway and stormwater management systems 4 feet from wetlands. As Director Sesto said, this public hearing was closed at the last meeting. And we have directed staff to develop potential conditions for denial of this application that we will review tonight. And we're voting on it tonight as well, Pat, correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Bob, I see your initials here. Did you want to?
Brian, am I a voting member on this? I was not at the.
Oh, I'm
last-
sorry, Klaus,
regular
you are seated.
Yeah, I am seated. Okay.
Yep, and you were not present
No.
at the public hearing last month, but we did finish the review of this application.
Yes.
And we are reviewing some potential conditions for denying it tonight.
Okay, but so I am voting. Okay, good.
Okay, Bob,
I should ask if, Klaus, did you review the minutes or
Yes.
listen to the recording?
Yes, I did. Not the recording as such, no.
But you reviewed the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
If you want me to go and abstain, if that's more.
Nope, I just
comfortable.
wanted the record to reflect that you have brought yourself up to speed with what
I
transpired.
have by reading the minutes, yes.
okay, very good. Thank you. Bob, do you have a preamble?
I would just direct the members' attention to the draft denial that was sent out in your packets last week. It includes a list of documents that were reviewed during the public hearing. It notes the dates that we held public hearing sessions, and it includes 5 factors that were brought up in the discussion of the hearing as reasons for denying this application. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I'd just say item 1 deals with the pollution renovation analysis that was not provided. Number 2 deals with the shade analysis and the likely impacts on the wetland of the shading that were brought up in the hearing. Number 3 talks about the failure of the applicant to provide an alternative with a ziggurat configuration as suggested by the chairman as a way of reducing the shading and those impacts. Number 4 is talks about the fact that constructing this large building 5 feet from the property line will necessitate either the direct or indirect removal of trees in the upland review area on abutting properties, and we only have consent from one of the abutting property owners for any such impacts. And number 5 talks about the mitigation plantings that were offered on adjacent property and some issues related to that was sort of left hanging, and therefore bring into question whether this is an actual viable mitigation offer. With that, I will leave it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Pat, anything to add to Bob's summary?
Nope.
Okay, very good. thank you. Well, what I'd like to do is sort of walk through these 5 conditions, get the agency's thoughts on them. I know you've all had a chance to take a look at this. If there's anything that you're unclear of, or if there's wording that you're in agreement or disagreement with, now would be the time to take a look at it and bring it up for discussion. So I'll start with item 1.
Brian?
Yes, Bill.
I have a question in number 1, and it's a question about the word. 5th line down, modeling. Is that, I understand what it means. Is that the best description of what we were asking for?
Yeah, I saw that one too. So in my field, at least, modeling tends to be pretty technical. While we were asking for a technical report, maybe we could consider changing that to something a little
I'm just
less.
not sure it communicates to anybody on the outside reading this exactly what we were looking for.
So is it would the word analysis?
Analysis is a little bit more,
Yeah,
or
that's
report,
that's maybe
or even
closer.
report.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've
With
recommended
the analysis it requested,
Okay.
or maybe, with the analysis that we, let's assume it's analysis, it's the analysis as to specific, a range of chemicals and things we were looking
Right.
for.
The analysis of the potential chemicals to be found there and the mitigation strategies.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, that
Um,
second part.
I think it really needs to be spelled out a little bit more.
So analysis, can you, what if that was explanation versus actual wording you wanted?
the
When I get
applicant-
modeling to
it
assess.
was an explanation, but if it sounded good, you're welcome to put it in. But applicant failed to provide the agency with the analysis of pollutants and subsequent mitigation strategies it requested.
And
Something.
that you don't feel
something-
that that's redundant of the first sentence?
Yeah, no, it was a type of pollutants. It was above and beyond what was,
Let's just leave the word as swap out modeling for analysis then if it is described.
That's what I would
Okay.
do too.
okay, that's cleaner. Okay.
Done.
Okay,
And my next comment would be in the second paragraph of number 1, the 3rd line. I think we dropped the word "to" after agency. Required for the agency to determine the impacts.
yeah.
Nice eye, Bill, for Penguin House.
Okay, very good. Any other comments, questions? I mean, my feeling is that this is definitely a valid reason for denial, so I'm supporting number 1.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that is feels contrary to that?
Nope.
And raise your hand. Okay, very good. Let's move on to number 2. This talks to the shade analysis. And a
I have a
qualified, go ahead, Bill.
Again, I have a question as to word choice. 8 lines down, the word acceptable. In the canopy due to shading was not acceptable in regard to the quality of the vegetation. Is it acceptable, or were we questioning the credibility of that analysis?
Want to change acceptable to credible?
I think credible is closer to the nature of what we were challenging in Matt's analysis or his opinion. my personal sense is we were not buying what he was saying in that regard. And I thought that the other consultant, Logan, essentially implied the same thing when he gave a conditional approval or a conditional agreement of Matt's report. I may have misinterpreted that, but I didn't think so.
I think credible is a acceptable credible alternative.
See what you did there.
It's credible is acceptable.
Okay. Yep, and in general, I'm in agreement with with how that second paragraph reads. I think it's fairly clear.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else? Any other thoughts? Contrary? No? Okay, very good. The next is, it has to do with prudent and feasible alternatives. And, whether it was specifically a ziggurat or some other, sort of stepped structure, that was just my own suggestion. But I think the bigger picture is here that we raised the issue of that there are ways to mitigate the shading of the wetlands through architectural strategies. And this fell on deaf ears, and there was no movement to try to change that or to address our concerns with a design.
Perhaps you could add the phrase "or other" after ziggurat.
Of a
Or other architectural.
I'd just say
Yeah, it needs a qualifier.
requested with a building
Yeah.
of a alternate configuration. I think it didn't
Don't
specifically.
need the ziggurat.
Okay.
Oh, who doesn't love a good ziggurat?
Hey,
Broadened our vocabulary.
I think we need to be sensitive that people who are not familiar with any of these details will not have a clue what ziggurat means. They're going to have to all go look it up, and it would be helpful to make an architectural reference.
Ellen is flying and then probably no decision.
I realize in this one, Bob and I should have also referenced section 10.3, which is that, so 710 says you have to provide alternates. In as much as this application went to a public hearing because the agency felt the project may have a significant impact on the wetland, the agency has to make a finding in accordance with 10.3 that alternatives were pursued, and they found that there was no alternative with a lesser impact. So I think that section 10.3, reference to 10.3 is missing from number 3.
Okay.
How would you?
So I would, and 10.3 also requires the agency to give the applicant constructive direction on what alternatives might be useful in pursuing. So I think I would add second sentence, something to the effect of, in accordance with 10.3 of the regulations, the agency was not able to make a finding that no feasible and prudent alternative existed. As stated in the public hearing, the agency requested building alternatives such as a ziggurat or other stepped back profile as an option or options to reduce shading impacts on the wetland and watercourse.
Okay, good.
Very good. Yep. Well said. Okay, very good. Moving on. Item 4. Now, I guess my question on number 4 would be, would the applicant necessarily need authorization if what they did was to just simply prune anything that extended over the property line? I mean, are they within their rights to prune as they will anything that extends over? Which seems to be what Mr. Hegney had said. He had
It was
litigated
explicit
before.
in that, yes.
So is number 4, I mean, it's obviously that this will happen, but do we require authorization from Mr. Chiapetta? I believe that was the gentleman's name or the neighbor's name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chiapetta, for this to be a valid condition of denial.
Our attorney indicated that authorizations are necessary when you are necessarily involving another property, which 6 Neil Lane was a fine example to which Mr. DeAndrea provided that authorization.
I mean, how does the rest of the agency feel about this?
Well,
I mean,
if,
we certainly will be, those trees will be affected to the point of essentially being removed. If not in the long term, and not in the short term, in the long term, but
I think that there's a difference between those immediately adjacent to the property line, which they have the right to prune, and due to the pruning, they may fail. But if the shading causes trees within the more remote parts of that property, can they be held responsible and they don't have authorization to go in and replace them or do anything?
Well, it wasn't discussed. I mean, my recollection was it was just inferred that obviously they have the right to trim any trees, any neighbor-owned trees that come over into their property. They do
Right.
have the right to trim them. But as you just said, Jay, the trimming would almost inevitably result in the destruction of those trees, which is what it is. But you're raising a bigger question about the shading impacting other trees on the adjoining property. There was no discussion of that.
It's funny because I sort of inferred that that's what they were talking about, was further into the property, not just on the perimeter. I may have been wrong in what they were inferring.
What did you infer they were saying?
I inferred that they would, that if there was damage within the property itself, not on the property lines, that they would have the authorization to go in and take care of it.
But we were not given any indication that that property owner had made any representations to that effect, correct?
Correct. DeAndrea did,
Correct.
but there's nothing there that says that they really discussed it with the other owner.
right. No, they had never contacted the other owner regarding the
Yeah.
project. And
Well-
they were noticed,
Correct. Mr.
But,
Hegney did say that. They were noticed, but they had heard nothing back.
Yeah.
right. And
I
so
would
they
say
did-
notice and authorization to be a party to an application should not be conflated.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I think we have some strong conditions here. I mean, I would be happy leaving number 4 in. I just wanted to get the rest of the agency's thoughts on it.
Should we expand the language in number 4 a bit, just to make it clear that, well, I don't know what
And
we
is
would
it
say.
would require pruning, excessive pruning to the point of failure?
Well, excessive is a troubling word.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think the impact to the more remote trees is covered by item number 2.
Mhm.
So, and, you know, as I think was brought up in the hearing, any property owner has the right to prune up to the vertical line above their property line.
Mhm.
And if that, you know, if that's a bad way to prune that species of tree and the tree is impacted, I mean, you know, if it were, you know, you can go to talk to your neighbor and say, I'm going to get a guy to come and prune this tree. Can I do it the right way? That's kind of the way it goes. And so I don't know how much is added by this condition, frankly.
Well,
I don't-
how far in is the upland review area on the adjacent property?
You go 100 feet from that water course to the east and west, that's the upland review area. So it's pretty much,
So it's basically the entire,
It's the
more or less the
backyard. I believe.
backyard.
yep.
Well, I would say if the agency feels question that this, you know, it may not be the strongest condition, but it's not as if this wasn't an issue for us. It was something that the agency did spend some time with.
Mhm.
And if this decision is appealed, a judge in the end will decide whether it had merit or not. I don't think that we have to spend, you know, we don't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt that this condition has, you know, the most solid thing we ever came up with.
I think that's valid.
You could
I
also
guess
say,
just- excuse me, Brian, just the fact that he doesn't have authorization, you know, you could just leave it that way. It's a little bit ambiguous as to what that authorization might include if he got it. But he doesn't have any written authorization, period.
well, you know, and then I also think it goes toward, it sort of dovetails with number 3, and I would recommend that perhaps we add construction of the 60-foot tall building in its proposed configuration 5 feet from the property line would necessarily require the complete or substantial removal, et cetera, et
Yes.
cetera.
Yes.
So in its proposed configuration, because had it been more of a step back design, those trees would have gotten more light, or they wouldn't have had to be pruned back to the point of failure.
Mhm. Okay,
Make sense?
makes
Yes.
sense.
Got it.
Okay, so we'll keep it with that modification. Okay, and then the last one. I guess I'm a little unclear on this. Let me just read through it again. Okay. Okay, so this is incomplete information? Or incomplete?
Yes, having that come in, that information come in at the last meeting, I know that there were mitigation plantings proposed in that location associated with another permit for 6 Neil Lane. But, you know, obviously having it submitted at the meeting, Barbara and I were able to review to figure out how those two things align, what sort of conditions for implementation would be necessary, what other sort of
Okay.
coordination is appropriate. I don't know.
But there were no materials submitted. It was just all verbal, wasn't it?
No, there was a map.
Oh, you're,
Right,
I'm
Bob?
sorry.
Am I
You're right.
remembering correctly?
Yeah, it was a revised planting plan that
You're right.
extended.
Yep, forgot that. Yep. Yeah. So I agree. We didn't have time to really look at it in that sense.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to have just a reference to the fact that the record, in this respect, the record was incomplete? Because that's language that, you know, reviewers of our decision can understand.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Nora.
I'm
That's,
suggesting a number 6 to wrap everything in and
Oh,
items as an incomplete, incomplete elements.
You're saying within number 5, right?
I was thinking of it with respect to paragraph 5, but if we added an additional paragraph 6,
Mhm.
the record is incomplete, that would solve the problem also.
Yeah, you could just probably add that as a final sentence.
Yes,
As
or
a-
I would,
as a
actually, I
result,
would
the
go with
record
the
is-
record being incomplete by virtue of the issues in 3. You could do 3, 4, and 5,
Yeah.
Okay,
reference that section.
Okay.
okay, very good. So I'm not getting a sense that anyone is disagreeing with the denial here. So Pat, how's best to go forward on this? Should we have a vote on this as discussed? And then the final, do you want to just review the final letter with me before it goes out?
That could
Or,
be fine. The changes here aren't complicated,
okay,
so I'm
so,
comfortable that Bob and I can incorporate the changes and capture, and happy to run it past you.
okay,
Be sure we got it correct.
that sounds good. Okay, so I will make a motion for denial of application 2021-132 based upon the criteria outlined in tonight's letter. Draft letter dated February 8th, 2022, as amended by tonight's discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Jay seconds.
And correct, Brian, this is to deny without prejudice.
Yes, absolutely. Deny without prejudice.
Anyone opposed?
Okay,
I see no indication of opposition.
very good. Well, hopefully if we see this application again, it'll take into account some of the information in the denial letter and see that reflected in what they come back with.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Let's move on then. 2021-154, 94 and 96 Porchuck Road, Rocco V. DeAndrea Inc. for Av Zaz Development Corporation and Luciano's Utopia Realty Inc. Construction of common driveway with wetland crossing. Again, this public hearing was closed. Bob, do you wish to take us through what we're going to talk about tonight?
Well, we're not really going to talk about much of anything unless members have questions about what was brought up during the hearing. It seemed to me that the direction you gave was to draft conditions of approval, which I sent out in the packets last week. There are 15 conditions of approval. We have I think the record was complete. I think the applicant made a case that their design of a 4-box culverts crossing was, a prudent and feasible design, more prudent and feasible than the other alternatives that were considered. And they did take the agency's guidance and came in with a planting plan for restoring the shoulders of this driveway, and I think they were very responsive and complete. So I would recommend the agency issue a permit with the conditions in the February 1st supplemental staff report.
Great, thank you, Bob. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the special conditions that Bob outlined in the staff report? No. And then this is lot 94, lot B and lot C. So this is both the plan for the one lot and the crossing for the other as part of this approval.
Right, then we did discuss that last month at the hearing because the, what was it? The conceptual approval for these two lots required them to come back and get permits to develop each of the lots. But we discussed it, the development activities on lot C, which is the westerly lot, are all basically more than 100 feet from any wetland. And therefore, the only sort of regulated activity that they're doing is this driveway. So this application represents that permit for lot C. Lot B, we separately approved a permit in January, separate application, separate permit.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Bob.
Bob, in your condition number 2, the reference to maintenance documents, how is the responsibility for that maintenance to be allocated?
I'm not an attorney, but they have to, and this is also reflected in DPW comments. They're not going to get anywhere on developing either lot until they have these easements worked out and filed. And it's, it's kind of however the developers and these people want to do it, but I would assume they would be sort of cross easements because some of the facilities are on one lot and some are on the other lot, and they're all connected.
Well, I guess what I was just thinking is that in practical terms, while this is all being developed, the maintenance responsibility falls on the developer. But as these properties get sold, should we assume that these maintenance requirements go with the property?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to run with the land.
Yeah, okay. And that'll be written in accordingly.
What about inserting the word appropriate before maintenance?
Okay. I'm fine with that. Okay, any other comments? No. Someone like to make a motion on this?
Motion to approve with the special conditions as drafted.
Second.
Right. Okay, any opposed? No? Okay,
Finishing up soon.
great. Thank you.
It's a special meeting.
Okay, next up is agency discussion items. First is consultant fees.
So when we last left this topic, which I think we discussed in our December meeting, I guess it was,
I think it was-
we were talking about the need to get consultants. Case law has definitely made it very clear that the agency, if they're not finding witnesses to be credible, that they need to bring in experts to defend or look into the concerns of the agency, that the agency can't just disregard an expert. So if there's only one expert, the hands of the agency are tied. The cost of these agency reviews can be small, $1,500 or maybe $5,000, but they can also be bigger, working their way up to the two we had, which was 249 Valley and 36 Cary Road, another $15,000. And those fees are not covered by, in those particular cases where the fees were about $4,500 for each application, we're in the hole. It is normal for towns, it is actually codified in statute that the towns can charge back applicants for the necessity to hire on consultants to represent the agency. Conversely, our application fees are pretty high. So there are definitely applications when you've got $50,000 where that fee is more than enough to cover staff time. And you would think an outside consultant. So, you know, I'm a little, you know, I'm not fully one side or the other, but I do know that, you know, in that 1 year, 2 applications blew our consulting budget. And largely we're going out and hiring consultants because the information that's being given to us is perceived as being, doesn't pass the sniff test, shall we say.
Mhm. Okay. I had a thought on this, and I think, and it could get shot down immediately as dumb, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyways. But is there a scenario in which you have a consultant fee, say we need to bring in a consultant because something doesn't pass the sniff test. If ultimately that application is approved, and they're able to go forward and do their development, we then charge them for that consultant. And this seems kind of counterintuitive, but then if the application is ultimately denied, we are not charging for that consultant. So an example like for the apartment complex that we just talked about, if we were to hire, you know, we did hire that consultant, if ultimately we approve that permit, the applicant would pick up the cost of that consultant review. If it was denied, they aren't able to build their project, we're not going to add the extra insult to injury by also charging him for the consultant fee. Thoughts on that?
Let me throw in a devil's advocate to that. What
Yeah.
if the reason for the denial was because they just didn't
Didn't do
bring in
anything.
something the agency asked them to bring in?
Yeah.
And that's, in
And
that
that's-
regard, it's sort of a situation of their own making.
Yeah, which is why I caveated this whole thing, but it may get shot down immediately, because I did see that. But, you know, I guess it's a question of, I don't know, it's just,
How
I'm
about,
trying
I
to,
was thinking about if the agency has a need to call in a consultant and the cost of that consultant exceeds the application fee, that the applicant's responsible for the balance. So in effect, they'd be getting staff time for free because the application fee would be going towards an outside consultant plus any balance. But I think that's okay because I don't think we hire out all that often. And that might soften the blow a bit of having to pay for an outside consultant again, because our fees are a little comparatively steep.
right, and our staff salaries are a fixed cost to us.
Yes.
Pat, try, run that one past me again. Maybe I lost it.
For say the last couple of applications, they've been individual houses, and those fees run somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000. So let's call it $5,000
Yeah.
for a house, regular old house. And we have to hire an engineer, and the fee for that is $15,000. So we'll take their $5,000 for the application fee, credit it towards the 15, so they just owe an additional 10,
Regardless of the outcome.
regardless of the outcome.
That's cleaner.
Hmm. And knowing that, that's the situation, that would be the situation going forward, it might make the applicants a little more cautious in how they present their applications, so that there might be less reason to hire a consultant. We get,
That's a good point. Good point.
Mhm.
Everyone would be more sensitive to the proverbial sniff test.
yeah,
I kind of like Pat's idea. That's not a bad way to go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, if you had a $50,000 application and we hire out, that's on us. You know, you, in
That's
effect,
also
your
where you get
application
the
fee already
expensive
paid enough.
consultants, probably.
Right.
Pat, say that again. If what?
If somebody had a $50,000 application fee and we needed to hire a consultant for $10,000, the applicant wouldn't be charged because they've already paid enough to cover the
Okay, that gets
outside
very
consulting
subjective.
fee.
That gets very subjective, though. What if they've got a $45,000 upfront, or a $40,000, or $38,000? What's the
Well,
line?
it's just depends.
Regardless of, sorry, Brian, go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead. No, you explain.
Regardless of what the application fee you pay, if you've paid enough to
Oh, I
cover the
see.
cost
I
in
see.
excess of what an outside consultant would cost, you don't
Gotcha.
get charged any further.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I think it's pretty
Yeah.
clean.
Yep.
At what point in the discussion with the applicant does the outside consultant fee come into play? Like, are they given the option to say, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to, I mean,
As soon as staff knows that
yeah,
something is cropping up, you know, it's our responsibility when the agency members are asking questions
right.
and it's something beyond our area of expertise or something we think that the record would benefit from having another consultant. That's when we go for it. Sometimes it's later in the process than earlier. Sometimes these issues don't really
No,
mature.
I get it. Yeah.
But we give a heads up to the applicant, and if he then wants to withdraw his application, we don't go and hire the consultants, right?
Right.
That's correct.
I mean, we
Okay.
should give them a heads up before we go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Klaus.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they get the heads up when, you know, because we have to tell them how much this is going to cost and they're going to have to pay the fee.
Does that, though, give them a chance to come back to us with another approach on the same questionable topic? In other words, if we're in discussion and, you know, the old smell test issue comes up, to Klaus's point, if we basically say, look, we're just not buying this particular argument that you're making, there's a choice here. Either you go back and come back with something that, you know, we can understand better and maybe agree with, or we're going to get our consultant, an outside consultant.
I would say in general, that is difficult to pursue in that regard for two reasons. One, time.
Mhm.
If we have to wait
Okay.
2 weeks or a month for something to come back and go, yep, you know, didn't do it.
Okay.
And the record, the agency wants a solid record, even if it's because our own consultant reinforced what the applicant is putting forward. That just makes for a better record
Okay.
Mhm.
for
I
us,
understand.
one way or the other.
Okay.
And then
The short answer to that, they would have the capability to come back without the other consultant again.
I would say that once we decided that we need an outside consultant, we just
That's
have to
that.
go for it.
Okay.
Between time and other
Thanks.
considerations, it's too difficult.
Yep.
now
If
this
they
would
came-
be.
If they came back, would they have to pay another application fee?
Yes,
Well, maybe.
and it's up to the agency. And the agency has waived fees in the past because we have had denials that were relatively easy to fix and perhaps we just ran out of time. So the agency, the applicant can always ask for a waiver of all or a portion of their application fee. And if the agency feels it's appropriate, that the staff time that has to go into it, the agency time that has to go into it isn't all that great, we can drop the fee. So if somebody comes in with a $50,000 application fee and they just needed to fix something in their drainage, let's say, and then they had to come back, the agency could definitely say another $50,000 fee isn't reflective of the amount of work that has to go into it and drop it to whatever is appropriate. So the agency always has the ability to alter its fees where appropriate.
But shouldn't that apply also to people that pay lower fees too?
It could,
the
very
small
much so.
Project, I mean,
Yep.
50,000 is a lot of money, but to some people, 5,000, 10,000 is a lot of money. So I
Correct.
think it ought to go across the board. It shouldn't depend on whether it's a 50,000 or a higher fee, or if it's a $5,000 fee, right?
I was just using that as an extreme example,
right.
but you're correct. The agency at any time could determine that a second fee in full or in part or at all is not warranted. But generally, because you get a denial once, doesn't mean you're entitled to a free pass the next go round. Because we do have to go through engineering again. Usually we do have
The
staff
likelihood
time.
is also that when you have a $50,000 fee, you've got a lot more professional
You do.
firepower behind all the what's being presented than when you have a regular house owner and
Yep. So case by case basis, I think is a sound way to go.
I think that sounds good. So now how would we necessarily account for this in the finances? So we would have we have our budget, but then we say that, so this could lead us to bringing in consultants more frequently, but it's just more of an understanding that this is a cost of doing business and is part and parcel of our fees.
Mhm.
And
It's
as
already
long-
written into our fee schedule that the agency may charge the applicants for its outside consultants. So if we are continuing down this line, we would issue a memo to our regulars to let them know that this is the policy of how the agency is going to implement what's already on its fee schedule.
Okay. That makes sense. Any other thoughts, questions on
I think that's a good way to
on
do it.
this?
We're gonna have a statement of what this revised policy is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can draft a statement for the agency's review for next meeting, if that makes you comfortable.
That'd be great.
I just think we should have something that's effectively posted so everybody can see it.
I just want to add something. In my world, fee shifting is invoked if a consultant's view as presented is not credible or it's frivolous. But if we just see a report, from a consultant, we can't really determine whether it's frivolous or not credible until we retain our own expert. So that's the conundrum I face. I don't really like this idea at all. That's just my 2 cents worth, because notwithstanding the fact that other towns do charge applicants for consulting fees, it seems I'm not comfortable with it.
What aspect, Norma, are you not comfortable with, the hiring of consultants or how we might charge?
I am not comfortable with the concept of like a punitive, imposition of fees because we need an expert. Ideally, the town should pay for the town should pay for it. It should be properly within our budget to retain an expert to review the views of a consultant, but that's not possible. We're considering this as an alternative, but just I'm not.
I would add that the town already pays for professionals to review the applications by way of your professional staff.
Yes.
So the town already does do that. So we're saying in special cases where we need specialized consulting, that we would hire that outside expertise.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that.
No, can I give an example, Norma?
Yeah.
We had a violation some years ago, and they built tiered retaining walls without a permit. They cleared a hillside to do so, and they came in with a very an application to correct it, but it was very,
Sketchy.
yeah, it was very it was baloney because they wanted to maintain the walls they built. They applied to maintain what they'd done. And I'm not a geotechnical engineer, nor was anyone on staff at that time. We hired a geotechnical engineer and he confirmed that this thing was completely unstable and it was not correctly built. So we had perfect grounds to tell them they had to remove it and restore the hillside.
Off Burning Tree.
No, that was up, it was up on Topping Road.
Yeah, I think I remember that one.
Well, what if if such an application comes in and staff legitimately concludes that it's inappropriate to continue their application process? Can you then say to the applicant, can that trigger something that would enable us to hire a consultant to refute their claims at their expense?
Well, I'm not, we're talking about who's paying for it. I mean, that was an example of where we hired somebody to do it.
Yes, but
We paid for the geotechnical engineer because we didn't really charge applicants on top of the fee. This is an application to correct the violation, but I would have been happy to charge that applicant for that geotechnical engineer because they said, this thing is fine, we want to maintain it.
Mhm.
And we looked at it and said, we don't think it's fine, but we can't tell that for sure.
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with that completely. And I think that the applicant in that case could have or was appropriately charged the fee. That's the type of fee shifting that I'm very comfortable with. Somebody comes in with something that's just ridiculous or outrageous, and we have to spend money to refute it, or they can change their, but it's very complicated. But in general,
But I think,
as presented so far, I'm not comfortable with the fee shifting.
as the director said, though, this is not going to happen very often.
Mhm.
And it may, and as Jay said, it may happen less often if applicants know it could happen.
Mhm.
So they will come in with more complete applications.
And I'll say to some extent that, and to a large extent, case law is driving this decision. Because judges have not necessarily given staff members, even expert staff members, the same credibility as they give to an outside consultant with the same credentials as your staff. And that's, I don't know why that is, but the case law has proven that out. It sometimes is not enough for one of the three of us to say, you know, what the consultant for the applicant is saying is incorrect, or we disagree with it, and have the agency rely on that to have a solid record.
Understood. I know that happens.
Yeah.
Or if the, because otherwise, what would your alternative be to say it's, because you can't say it's incomplete because they're submitting something, even if it is potentially hogwash. So you can't sort of preemptively deny it and say, come back with more credible information without a consultant telling us that it's not credible.
Well, I'm sorry to say I don't have a solution. All I'm doing is saying I'm kind of uncomfortable with this as it's laid out so far. I could be persuaded, but at the moment I'm not.
Norma, could you articulate a solution for your discomfort?
A nice dinner.
No, but I think we need to move forward on this, and we agree that there are occasions where we need to hire a consultant to validate our objection to some argument put forth by an applicant. Even if the courts don't think our staff is capable of pushing back, a third-party consultant allegedly gets more credibility by the courts. Fine, so we have to hire consultants. The issue is, how do we pay for it? You know, this shifting that you referred to, how do we address that to get you comfortable? What's the nuance here that at least I'm missing?
Well, I probably have to give it more thought, but if our consultant is obviously correct and the applicant changes his position, then that would warrant some kind of fee shifting because his guy was incorrect from the outset.
Mhm.
But it's very complicated. I mean, I've lived through a lot of these things. It's very, very difficult to determine these equitably.
It's really,
wouldn't
you're only shifting fees once you get beyond the threshold of the application fee itself, right?
right.
Implementing.
What about, I was just thinking, what about like the opposite of what Brian said earlier? I mean, a consideration that if we hire a consultant and they completely agree with the other consultant, then we're going to end up paying for that, then we would pay for that. And then if it's like just kind of discredited or disproving or however we want to word that, the other one, then they're going to end up paying for it, the applicant.
That's kind of the European approach to how you do these things. But the trouble is that in most cases, you're going to find in 99% of the case, no consultant is ever going to go and agree 100% with the other one, and you're going to get nuances. So it's going to be just a wager of the consultants in some ways and compromises, and then you can't really then allocate that appropriately on who pays for it.
That sounds right to me.
Pardon me?
That sounds right to her.
Yeah.
Norma's agreeing with you, Klaus.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
You
still think
need to buy the dinner, Klaus.
Well, I know that costs me a dinner.
It may well.
Well, we can, if there's reasonable comfort with this, we can go forward for a year, see how it works out. I mean, nothing's carved in stone.
And I think that if it's,
I think
there's
Pat's
nothing that
solution's
the
a
applicant
pretty good
can't
one.
appeal, if we go beyond their budget, the allocation of the fees, it's something that we can consider at that time.
Is
And
it going to be a written policy, or how is this going to be?
Well, it already states on, stepping back, the statutes are very clear that we are allowed to charge fees to cover our costs. And the DEEP has been explicit that we can charge the cost of consulting fees back to the applicant. So legally, we're on solid ground. So then we just need to decide how we want to implement that statute,
Yeah.
or
I mean,
ask for the statute.
I think-
I'm more than happy to write this up. It's already on our fee schedule that we can charge back the consultants. We've not, to this point, taken advantage of that because we haven't really had to, but we seem to be running into some foul odored stuff of late.
I think
So I can
you're
write
right.
up the policy as we've discussed it tonight for the agency to have a look. How we implement what's on our fee schedule and have a look at our March meeting.
I think you ought to write it up, and I think in whatever we give to the applicants, we ought to give them a heads up and give them notice as to how this is-
Yeah.
the policy goes forward, so that everybody knows.
Yeah.
I would
I have
agree.
to say, I feel very worldly, Klaus. Thanks for saying I had the European approach. I appreciate that, even though we're not going with it. Another thing that I meant, so just something maybe we want to discuss or can't discuss or can't have an answer to, is we keep talking about sniff tests and poor engineering reports and poor environmental assessments and such. At what point, I mean, is there a board? Is there a place where we can file instances where an engineer comes in and says, well, that engineering report for that retaining wall was completely bogus and dangerous. And at some point it impacts someone's standing as a professional certified engineer.
I think you'd wind up getting sued.
Is that true? Okay, so there is no board. There's no checks on
I think
that.
you'd get sued for slander or libel or something probably. I mean, yeah, I think you're just inviting litigation.
Yeah.
Are there
And
some-
in-
If a professional engineer comes in and gives you a report, and you get another engineer to refute that report, that's a matter for the engineers to work out between them. They need their license, they have their, they have their engineering license. I had mine when I needed it. Luckily, I didn't have to get involved in that sort of a situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I think of it as like an attorney being, disbarred.
It imputes, it would impugn their reputation, or at least that would be the charge. I'd stay far away from
No,
that.
that's
Yeah.
not our charge to get into that.
No.
I mean, there are certain.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No.
You had an opportunity to look at the, or is there anything written from the area towns that do charge applicants for consultant fees? I mean, what has Darienne's experience been? And can we learn anything from these towns that would help us,
Yeah, we're being more generous than they are in, well,
Oh,
funny
yeah.
I should say that
obviously,
because we're not, they're far more generous than we are in their application fees. And we're being, if we go forward with, as we've discussed it tonight, we'd be more. Most of the towns, the way it works is the town gets an estimate for the consulting services, then the applicant posts 125 or 150%, or sometimes just 100% of that cost.
Mhm.
The town pays its bills, and if there's any left over, it goes back to the applicant.
Okay. And is that written down anywhere?
Yes, in their regulations or on their fee schedules.
Okay, would we be amending our regulations or?
We don't have to amend our regulations because we make reference to a fee schedule and it's on the fee schedule.
Uh-huh, okay.
Different towns, some towns have their fee schedule as part of their regulations, which long ago, town attorney said, don't do that, because every time you amend your fee schedules, you're amending your regulations, which is a much bigger undertaking than you want to deal with. So it's a mix.
Okay.
But we are going, if we do this, we are going forward in changing how we deal with consultants' fees in some ways, and we have to give some notice to people on that, right? I think it just makes sense
Well,
to do that.
technically, yes and no. Courtesy wise, yes.
That's what I'm talking about. Courtesy.
Yeah,
I'm
because
not
it's already
talking-
on our fee schedule. So essentially they've had a buy
Yeah,
for a number of years.
right.
But yes, I'm all
But
for
we haven't,
sending a memo
we
out to our
haven't-
regulars to say, this is what we're doing. That's
right,
professional courtesy.
Yes.
I agree with that.
because we didn't enforce that in the same way as we would
No,
intend
we
to
have
go
not.
forward now, so.
How would
Now,
we
are
go
there
about-
particular, I'm sorry, Maureen.
How would we go about informing the world that there is now a change in policy?
That's. what
We
I'm
have a
talking-
list of what we call our interested parties. So by way of example, when we were going through all these different executive orders, we would send out, we being our applications coordinator, Peter Mangs, would send out to our list of interested parties, this is what the new executive order means, or if we've got something, a shift in a deadline, or even, we're closing, early, whatever.
Yeah.
We have a list of our normal players that we correspond with.
Okay.
A good idea.
Okay, so Pat, please go ahead and draft that up and we'll take a look at it.
Okay,
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a handful of instances where
Yes.
it exceeds the application fees and but I think it is a positive thing for us to look at doing. Okay, very good. We had consultant fees and then B fee schedule. Is there another, is this all part and parcel of the same thing? Okay.
Same thing.
I'm done.
Very good. So last item that we have is an application 2014-056 2 Conyers Farm Drive. There's a request to modify a special condition number 6 of permit 2014-67, which you've got a memo regarding it, and it has to do with
That the
a
special
different
condition
planting plan.
called out a very specific planting plan. And Jay Fain Associates has taken over the property and that application or that permit. And we want to move from the very specific reference to that one landscape plan to a plan that Jay's office has devised and is much less intense, but just as encompassing, if that makes sense. And Bob had this application from the get-go of 2014, so I invite him to supplement that.
Okay.
That sums it up pretty well. I mean, if you have had a chance to look at the original landscaping plan, it was more like a, East Hampton type planting plan. And Jay Fain and Associates have been retained by the new owner of the property, who wants to do a lot less work on the property. They're not going to build a hockey rink, for instance. But they also don't want to have this very formal planting scheme that you have before you, that Doreen is sharing. And I think it is appropriate for the site. Jay is on the Zoom call if you have any questions for him. But I would recommend the agency grant the request, and we can substitute some appropriate language in special condition 6 that will, keep the condition tight as far as, its implementation in the sequence of the development of this part of the property, but will allow the current owner to have the landscape restored in a more naturalistic way.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate Jay being waiting in the wings. I don't necessarily need to hear from him unless there's anyone in the agency like to hear from Mr. Fain.
Nope.
No, okay.
Is this a project that's coming to us anytime soon? No.
No, it's a permit. On the plan before you, that right now this is the property as you go into Conyers Farm through the Conyers Farm Drive gatehouse. It's the first property on the left.
Right.
Or if you're going up from North Street, taking a left, going north, taking a left on Lower Cross Road, it's the first property on the right.
Correct.
And there's a gatehouse, which is shown in the lower left corner of this plan. There's a sort of a barn type thing in the north, actually the upper left corner of this plan. And then the thing in the lower right corner, that's going to be the house. That's going to be the main house with a driveway, wetland crossing, and a pool. But as part of that permit in 2014, the applicant and owner at that time offered this plan that's before you, and the agency put condition 6 in saying, okay, do this plan. You have to complete, start installing it before you start developing the house. And that's pretty specific.
Right. I guess my question is, with that said, is that house construction going to come back, or is that all approved in the prior application?
It's still a valid permit. It's gonna,
Gotcha.
they're gonna start work on this tomorrow. If actually the landscaping stuff tomorrow.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. I'll make a motion to amend special condition 6 as suggested in the write-up of February 4th. In the memo of February 4th. Is there a second?
Second,
I'll second that.
Okay.
Bill, gotcha.
Bill, gotcha. Anyone
Okay.
opposed? No? Okay. I believe that is it for tonight's entertainment. Anything else from anyone?
thank you.
Super.
Okay, well, I guess Elliot missed all the fun. We'll have to tell him.
He mostly missed your glasses.
I know there's spectacular. I'm going down to visit my mom and tomorrow, actually, she has a whole basket full. I'll get you all a set.
Good.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank
Tell
you.
Mom we liked her glasses.
Yeah, we'll all watch, we'll all wear them at the next meeting.
Just send me a set of empty frames. I don't need the lenses.
All right. Oh, God bless you. All right. Well, thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Good night, all.
Recording
Good night.
stopped.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Night all.
Good night.